Hi, I'm Kesenya and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. I'm your Astro Weather Girl, here with this week's Astro Weather Report. I'm going to show you how the stars are going to affect your life this week. Taking your power back. Massive personal transformation, huge change, huge life healing. It's all happening in this year's Pluto Retrograde, my friends. Let's find out all about it this week. In 2025, Pluto's retrograde period is going to begin on May the 4th or the 5th, depending where you are in the world, and it's going to end on October the 13th. So it's going to span roughly 5 months. So this is a really interesting retrograde for us because it's the first time Pluto is going to spend the entire retrograde cycle in the sign of Aquarius, where he moved permanently last year. So this is the first time we've had Pluto do an entire retrograde cycle in Aquarius since the 1700s, in fact, when he was last in Aquarius. So Pluto retrograde is often viewed as a time for reevaluation and transformation. It's a very powerful transit internally, deep and psychologically, and also on the global mass scale as well. Pluto is always more intense when he's retrograde, because when he's retrograde, he is closer to us here on planet Earth. And when a planet is closer, well, we can feel its potency. Plus, he's also slow moving, so he's close and slow moving, two of the key components in astrology that determine the strength and impact a planet can give to a person's life. So, my friends, down here, Pluto is moving between 3 degrees, retrograding right back to 1 degree. So only moving roughly 2 to 3 degrees, not much in his retrograde motion. This is pretty typical of Pluto because, as I said, he's a very slow-moving planet. And when planets move slowly, they burrow down on those degrees, impacting everything they come in contact with over a prolonged period of time. And this is why Pluto's far more impactful than, say, a Venus transit across 1 to 3 degrees of Aquarius would be, because Venus is quite quick by comparison. So we really feel Pluto's impact because it lasts a long time. Now, Pluto has been making his famous 3-degree transit effect, which I'll talk about in just a minute, very strongly felt in our lives since he moved here into Aquarius last year. So he moved into Aquarius at the end of last year, and he's been doing a forward motion right up to the 3rd degree of Aquarius ever since. So if you have personal planets, my friends, at the fixed signs, which are Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, or Scorpio, if you've got planets at 1 to 3 degrees of Scorpio, Pluto has been squaring those planets in your chart, or opposing those planets in your chart, or conjuncting those planets in your chart. And you would have been feeling this energy very strongly. I have my sun opposite Pluto at the moment. And believe me, I have had some events that are very much indicative of Pluto's first phase, which is what I'm talking about, when Pluto's moving forward firstly across these degrees. Then Pluto turns around at retrograde time, which is now, and moves backwards over these degrees over this 5-month period. So you're going to get a second hit to one of your personal planets that sits between 1 and 3 degrees of the fixed signs. And then in October, on the 13th, he's going to start moving forward again across 1 to 3 degrees of Aquarius and give it a third hit. So this is the three transit effect. I'm going to break this down for us in just a second. So I've talked about the hard aspects who are going to be feeling the toughness of Pluto, the heavy transformational energy of Pluto that strips away anything superfluous and makes us get down to brass tacks, down to the core of who we are, psychologically examining our soul. Very, very powerful. And if we work with Pluto's energy, we can get a lot of benefit out of this time, even though it can bring a lot of difficulties and challenges and upheavals when Pluto is making square aspects or oppositions or conjunctions to any of our planets. Now, we can also consider Pluto transiting 1 to 3 degrees of making aspect rather to 1 to 3 degrees of the air signs, because Libra, if you've got planets at 1 to 3 degrees of Libra, it will be making a trine to Pluto. Or Pluto will be making a trine to your natal planet, I should say. And the same with Gemini. 1 to 3 degrees of Gemini, natal planets trining with Pluto. And that can be more beneficial, and the transformation and the change that comes can be felt in a more enjoyable, easy, if you like, kind of way. It'll still transform you, but it won't be with as much ripping the band-aid off kind of effect, if you know what I mean. So let's talk about this first phase of Pluto, which has already happened. We've already gone through it at the beginning months of this year 2025. So this is a time in the first crossing of Pluto, and this happens with almost every degree that Pluto transits in the course of his journey, because he's so slow moving and only moves such a short space in a small period of time, that usually everyone will have, no matter what degree your planets are at, you will end up having a 3-phase transit of Pluto to your planets. Anyhow, I digress. When Pluto is in the first phase, meaning crossing for the first time or aspecting for the first time, it's a time when we feel powerless with whatever the planet that's being aspected represents, whatever that may be. If it's aspecting your Venus, then you might feel powerless with love or money. If it's aspecting your Mars, you might feel powerless with your ability to assert yourself or tap into your courage. If it's aspecting your Sun, you might feel that your sense of self has been eroded and your confidence has been had the rug pulled out from underneath you. But in its innate essence, the planet, we need to look at what the planet represents. I've just given you some examples then. And we also feel powerless with the houses that the planet rules in our chart. So let's say this was a Scorpio rising chart and Pluto was making an aspect to Mars. Well, it would really undermine and create difficulty with your sense of self, your ability to initiate new changes in your life, for example, because Mars is the ruler of your first house in traditional astrology, Scorpio. Also, for a Scorpio person, Mars rules Aries, the 6th house, so there might have been some powerlessness experienced at work. So this is just an example. There's many combinations of this energy that we could talk about, but I'd be here for the next 24 hours trying to explain it all for everybody. Just know, and this is where learning astrology can be so helpful because you really get a deep understanding, but we're looking at the innate essence of the planet that's being aspected by Pluto, as well as the house that planet rules in our personal chart. Now, when Pluto makes a hard aspect by transit to our personal planets, and for those who don't know, personal planets, we're looking at Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and you can also consider Jupiter or Saturn. We don't necessarily worry too much about the celestial planets. They're not quite so personal. But something probably has happened to you in the beginning of this year, my friends, that you didn't know was going to happen before it happened. It came out of the blue, it was sudden, or you didn't see it coming. It kind of like you turned the corner and there it was, kind of thing. So my friends, this has already happened in your life. Think back about what has happened in the start of this year that felt like the rug being pulled out from under you, felt like a massive change, felt like you didn't see it coming and it's really knocked you off course. This is Pluto's first phase dance, if you like. Now, I know what it represents for me with my Sun opposite Pluto with this transit. And so I just want to ask you, think about it. Refer to your journal if you need to. What has happened to you that has brought this massive change, this massive upheaval, and it will have happened either at an internal level or an external level or both. Usually an external something has happened and it's caused you to introspect and go through big psychological assessment process. That's Pluto's first phase. The second phase of Pluto we're about to go through. Pluto is going to retrograde across these points and therefore aspecting any of our planets for the second time that are in these fixed signs like I described, or maybe making a trine. Now, it's not an ordinary time, this second phase of Pluto, when he's making the second aspect to our personal planets. It can actually call out of us our deepest fears, and this includes, and especially includes where Pluto is concerned, our fears of success. think about it. A lot of us dream about this and that and the other, and we want to have got a vision board and we want to achieve this. What if it actually happened? How would you cope? How would your mental attitude to life cope? You might have a mindset of nothing good happens to me, or I always end up with the worst partner in the world. Why does this always happen to me? And I know I have to go through that process of finding somebody new, or why does my employer always treat me like crap, or whatever. And we dream about something better. What if you got that something better? Would you be able to recognize how beautiful it is, how amazing it is, how abundant it is? And Pluto can call out our deepest actual subconscious fears about getting what we want, because he calls our bluff during this second phase. We may even get what we say it is we've always wanted, but our psychological self might sabotage us in that process, might cause us not to appreciate it, or might undermine that beautiful thing coming into our lives. For example, we meet the love of our life, the most perfect man, woman we've ever encountered, and we don't believe it could be true because we don't have that abundance mindset. Our psychological attitudes affect the gift of Pluto that can sometimes come to us during this second phase. So we can get what it is that we say we've always wanted. Like I said, Pluto's calling our bluff, but be warned, success can be very psychologically unraveling. So this is why, my friends, it's just so important that we do therapy, that we retrain our brain to think well, to think positively, to think uplifting thoughts and look for the best, to stop being lazy, to invest in who we are, to grow our character, to change anything in us that is holding us back. We need to do the work. Pluto calls us to do the work. Otherwise, when these events occur, we get what we always wanted and we self-sabotage, and it's taken away from us. So my friends, Pluto rules therapy. I encourage you during this second phase of Pluto, his retrograde transit, get into therapy. And that doesn't have to be expensive, pay a psychologist kind of stuff. Journaling is a form of therapy. Listening to Louise Hay as you fall asleep every night, talking about a new mindset. 101 Power Thoughts for Life. Great video, check it out. That's retraining your brain as you fall asleep at night. You could also consider therapy to be doing dance therapy. I did dance therapy almost every day during COVID lockdowns. It was what got me through big time. I was able to do what I call my FU dance to our premier at the time and the politicians that were responsible for destroying our economy at that time. And it was so empowering. I didn't change perhaps much out there in the world, but it changed me and gave me a sense of, I can deal with this. I'm getting this frustration and this anger out of my body so that I can live in greater vibration. And what happened? David came into my life during the COVID lockdowns. So that's, to my mind, a very strong example of doing Pluto therapy. Dance therapy really is powerful and really changes your vibration. Also music therapy, art therapy, talking with friends on a regular basis and debriefing the struggles you're going through and supporting one another is a form of therapy. I mean, there's so many forms of therapy. My friends, find out what works for you and get stuck into it during this second phase of Pluto, his retrograde over the 3rd to the 1st degree of Aquarius. And then we're going to have in October, after October the 13th, when Pluto turns direct, Pluto's going to move into his 3rd phase. And this is when he's going to move forwards across these planets that are at the 1st to the 3rd degree of the fixed signs particularly. And this is going to be in play from the end of 2025 through into 2026. During this time, we learn to fully embrace the new energy and the change that's arrived, and for many of us who are empowered, the opportunity that has come to us during this second phase of Pluto while he retrogrades. So you may get to experience what it is you say you've always wanted as reality. Then you've got to go through this psychological process. Oh my God, my deepest, darkest fears of this success and my attitudes towards this success and my true beliefs need to be composted perhaps and changed. But out of that composting once we've faced our fears, can emerge a peace and a new state of being that really blesses our life. Now, this particular process, this 3-phase process of Pluto, is never more profoundly seen than when we have a Pluto square. Pluto squaring its natal position. So that's when you're going to notice it most powerfully and most strongly. And that happens at different ages for everybody. I talk about that in my midlife astrology course that's available at the Guiding Star Astrology Learn Astrology page. So if you want to learn more about Pluto square, that's where you go. But it will be felt during this retrograde phase for most of us who've got, like I said, planets at this point are going to experience a sort of a more subdued, if you like, impact of this kind of 3-phase process of Pluto. Remember, the key here is Pluto is always more intense when he is retrograde. When Pluto is direct, he's more interested in external power, the great job, getting lots of money, all that sort of stuff. That's what Pluto will be going for that. But Pluto, when he's retrograde, is actually more psychological. He's about this inner healing, this transforming our fears, the investigation into, the bit of the iceberg that's below the water, that 70%, 80% of who we really, really are deep at our core that we don't often see easily. So this is a very deep time in this 3-phase process. So we're now going to be able to register the unseen very quickly and the negative side or the true darkness in humanity much more easily now. And speaking from my own personal experience with Pluto for me is in the 8th house natally. 8th house is often known as the house of darkness, peering into the darkness, and having Pluto there makes somebody very capable, let's say, of looking into the darkness and facing the darkness and hopefully, fingers crossed, transforming the darkness in our lives as well, because that's what Pluto does. He's transformative. So those of us who have a strong Pluto in our charts, or a Pluto that is very geared towards, looking into the darkness and seeing that, when I say the darkness, I mean all the shit that is going on in the world. Pluto is really about understanding what's going on below the surface, what is happening where you can't see it happening, like the stuff that the mainstream media is not going to tell you. Pluto gets right into the core of really the motivations behind these things, what's really going on. If you want to know what's really happening in the world, my friends, find somebody who is not afraid to look at the darkness with their Pluto placement. It might be me, if you want to go down that road, but there's others as well who are really, really good at looking at the deep motivations behind everything that happens in our world. These are very strong Plutonian people who know where it's at, okay? Now, many of my fellow Pluto strong let's call them conspiracy theorists, or as I would rather call them, pattern observers, we have been subjected to, the shadow expression of Pluto that comes out of our ability to peer into the depths, being isolated from life, being isolated from other people. And this is something that Pluto's retrograde can bring about even more in a more exacerbated way, because when you can see the truth at the core, at the base, the motivations at the bottom of everything, it really is confrontative to people who don't like to look at that sort of stuff. And that's unfortunately quite a majority of people. And that can really isolate you from others, from participating in, fluffy, ordinary life, so to speak. But many of those of us who are strong in our Pluto placement are perfectly willing to go there for the sake of living in awareness, living in consciousness, living in truth. But it sure ain't easy to experience the rejection and the vitriol that it often stirs up in other people. Now, I've kind of gone off on a tangent there. Let's come back to Pluto. It does relate. Pluto, when he's retrograde, is going to trigger that more in people. So more people are going to be able to see into the darkness now, because that's Pluto retrograde. It's more internally focused, more intense, more deeply focused, rather than, hey, I want power out in the world. It's more about what's really going on, what's at the depth of this, what's at the bottom of this. That's Pluto retrograde. So you will notice more people are discovering the truth, becoming aware, knowing in their heart what the real story is behind things. And we need to care for one another now, because, as I just mentioned, it can be tremendously isolating when you suddenly become aware, oh my God, I've been deceived, or oh my God, this is the truth, and I've had the wool pull over my eyes. So it can be very difficult. So let's be there for one another, loving, supporting, caring for one another. Now, my friends, if you were born with Pluto retrograde in your natal chart, and of course it's retrograde for 5 to 6 months actually of each year, so there's a good majority of people who are born with a retrograde Pluto in their chart, and they'll tend to have much greater insights into their subconscious self. So this is the same kind of energy that's going to be moving across the planet during this time, this capacity to have greater insight into ourselves during the retrograde transit of Pluto now. And it's going to make humanity as a whole more interested in psychology, more interested in analysis, perhaps more interested in occult practices too, including astrology. But it also makes us feel more the loner and more introverted. And I've illustrated that already. When you can see something and everybody else is ignoring it and they're not listening and they don't care, you feel like you're alone. So again, we've got to reach out and support one another as many of us go through this process of deep psychological analysis. We can also have trouble relaxing around lots of people, like being in a big crowd might feel really difficult for us while Pluto is retrograding, due to these deep psychological processes and sort of registering so much information. It's just like overload, okay? So let's be kind to one another during this time. Let's not dig into the Pluto, dominance of other people and power over other people and manipulation of other people. Let's just care for other people as we all go through a new psychological awareness that Pluto retrograde always brings about. Pluto represents the power of death and rebirth. And believe me, for those of us who are having planets affected by this Pluto 3-phase transit, it is a death and birth experience, metaphorically. It's a regenerative experience. It's a rejuvenating experience. But for all of us on the planet, it is going to be a high time of rejuvenation and regeneration that will usually relate to the house position that Pluto is retrograding in. And we're going to talk about this for each sign very, very soon. But for many, this is going to be like a metamorphosis, like the caterpillar coming out of the cocoon. This phase I would liken, this second phase of Pluto, I would liken to the caterpillar in the cocoon. When Pluto first crosses these degrees, he's spinning the cocoon, making the cocoon around him, okay? And then we're in the cocoon during the retrograde phase. What happens during that cocoon phase for the caterpillar? Well, it's turning from a caterpillar into a butterfly during that phase. You can't see it happening, but it's happening inside, very like Pluto's second phase. And then when Pluto moves direct in October, the butterfly will emerge from the cocoon. So get ready. This is our metamorphosis, my beautiful friends. Let's break down, just in dot point form, some aspects about this Pluto journey. Pluto retrograde encourages a lot of introspection. We've already talked about that, and re-examination of our values and our goals, and often relationships too. Pluto does have a strong correlation to relationships. In fact, he's one of the soulmate planets, and I would suggest one of the most important and powerful soulmate planets. Jeffrey Wolf Green wrote a lot about that sort of thing. He was an expert in Pluto theory because he had so much heavy Pluto energy in his own chart. Absolutely amazing man. And I talk extensively about soulmates and the ability to recognize soulmates and find soulmates in my relationship course, which forms part of the advanced astrology level of the Royal Stars Academy, for anyone who's interested. So Pluto is going to cause us to really introspect and re-examine our relationships during his retrograde phase, and it can bring to light areas where personal growth and personal transformation in those fields is really needed. Either in yourself, that's the best place to start, or you might notice it in the relationship as an entity of its own. there can be some significant shifts of energy in different fields of life beyond the ones that I've just mentioned. And we might like to look at our friendships or our career paths, our financial situations, our family dynamics. Pluto can be impacting a shift of energy in those fields as well. We really, as I've already illustrated, need to focus on self-care, usually through therapy is a great idea, but it's really important to sort of ensure a balance between giving and receiving at this time, because giving too much can lead to exhaustion, and being too demanding can lead to a loss of the loved ones we care about from our lives. So we need to balance the giving and receiving, and Pluto, calls us to have a look at that, often through difficult circumstances that trigger an awareness about where things are out of balance in that regard in our lives. But this is an opportunity for growth. Pluto retrograde provides opportunities to reclaim and embrace our true core being, our true self, to take our power back. But frequently, we've got to embrace our courage and our convictions to do so. And it's not always easy, to confront somebody about something where they've been taking your power from you, or to stand up and say, I'm walking away because I need to honor what's best for me. It's time to level up, my friends, to tap into our courage and our convictions, to take our power back wherever it's needed, even from, the brainwashing that we're, bombarded with by the media. You might suddenly wake up and say, I'm taking my power back. I'm not going to let you brainwash me anymore. I'm not watching the television anymore. Off it goes. Forget mainstream media. That's an example of taking your power back and reclaiming your true self, listening to that higher voice within you that says, this is a load of BS. This isn't right. I don't align with that belief or that attitude or that behavior I'm seeing happening in the world. I want to own my feelings, my thoughts, who I am, and not be told what to think and feel and do from now on. So again, time to level up. This is an opportunity for growth. Now we're going to explore what Pluto retrograding means for all signs. I do hope everybody has listened to this introduction, because really it's where it's at. This is the powerful, meaty bit of my video. But we're going to start with Aries, because I know they like to go first and we want to keep everybody happy at this time when Pluto's turning retrograde. So Aries, you're first off the ranks. We have Pluto retrograding in your 11th house between the 4th or 5th of May, depending where you are in the world, until the 13th of October. So this is in the house of friendships, Aries, and so this is a time when friendships might be tested. And so this really is calling you to look deep at your friendships, to do some self-examination about your role in the friendships that you've got, and to realize where you need to strengthen the commitments that you've got with the people that you love in your life. Now, Pluto in the 11th house is also about group activities, group involvements, and Pluto retrograding here is not really that good for group involvements. For the Aries individual, Aries rising, sun or moon, when Pluto is retrograding here, you probably have a gift for going into a group situation and breathing new life into it, getting things focused, getting things in a group situation back on track, and then nicking off. It's not a long-term, like probably by the end of the retrograde, you might have joined the local Lions Club or something like that, whipped them into line, and then I've had enough of this, I'm out of here, by October. So a retrograde Pluto transit through the 11th house can see you playing that life changer role, if you like, in some sort of group or organization or club. And that can be a gift to them, but it can also create some friction. If you waltz into an organization that's been around for 200 years or something, to restructure a group, show them the modern way to do it with consciousness, be a bit careful. Don't tread on toes. Tread carefully, Aries, if you're involved in that sort of situation. Also, Aries, this is not the time for you to follow the crowd. Now might see, usually you won't want to do so anyway. You want to go your own way. But with Pluto retrograding here, you might be really doing that self-evaluation that I talked about in the introduction, exploring how you can be sort of separate from the crowd, part of society, part of the world, but doing your individual thing. And where you've chosen to do that in the past, that might have caused some psychological unraveling or imprinting. So you'll be looking at individualism is a real thing that you're going to want to explore, Aries, during this retrograde process, and how you can be an individual but still be part of society, part of the group. Also, Pluto is the god of great wealth. Here in the house of big money, in Vedic astrology, the 11th house is the house of big money. And of course, when he's retrograding here, we know it's, as I said in the introduction to this video, it's an internalized process. It's looking within. It's not so much, I'm going to have the best job, I'm going to be a billionaire, I'm going to, everything external. So really, it's going within now, about money, about dreams, about goals, and refining and analyzing and purifying, regenerating, rebirthing what that looks like for you. Where do you want to make your money? Do you want it to be something purposeful and meaningful for you that generates the money in your life? Or are you just interested in making big money however and wherever and whatever ways you can? Well, this is a time for introspecting on that, analyzing that, coming to some inner conclusions about all that sort of financial goals, dreams, aspirations, kind of side of yourself. Yes, you can take action out in the world, absolutely. But while Pluto's retrograding, the analysis side, the introspecting side is actually more prominent in your life right now. And don't forget, my beautiful Aries friends, if you want to understand more about Pluto's transit through the 11th house, check out my Pluto Through the Houses playlist. It will give you all you need to know about Pluto moving through the 11th house. I've got a whole hour-long video on what that's going to do in your life. You'll love it. Check it out. Moving right along now to Taurus rising, Taurus sun, and Taurus moon, people. Well, Taurus, you are having Pluto retrograding in your 10th house. This is an important transit because it's an angular house, and we feel angular house momentum much more strongly than many other houses. So here is Pluto transiting retrograde second phase, which I talked about in the introduction, through the 10th house. So we can expect some shifts in our career path, potentially leading to some new directions or changing priorities with our career and our worldly aspirations and our worldly achievements. Yes, 10th house has to do with what you're doing to make big bucks in the world, but it also has to do with your aspirations. So for example, maybe you want to publish a book. It may not make you, the world's greatest billionaire, but it is a worldly achievement to say, publish a book or release an album or get that book of poetry out in public through some sort of blog or something like that. It's what we want to do for the world and give to the world. It's our aspiration to leave a mark. In many forms of astrology, the 10th house is associated with the legacy we leave, and the 4th house is associated with the legacy we inherit from those who've gone before. Okay, so you can have some changing priorities, some transformation with regard to your worldly aspirations and what you're doing for a career to make money. Now, Pluto, when he transits retrograde through the 10th house, as I've said, he's in the second phase of his transit process. But both retrograde Pluto and direct Pluto in the 10th house tend to have problems with authority figures. And this is likely to be a theme in your life, my beautiful Taurus friends, for the next 20 years while Pluto transits through here. So to be forewarned and forearmed about that. But this is because Pluto is about power. And here in the 10th house of authority, you may be going through a process of learning to take your power back from authority figures that have undermined you in the past or taken it from you in the past. And both Pluto direct and Pluto retrograde give that tone. Now, if you can find some form of career where you work for yourself, or where you work for a boss who, frequently isn't there or disappears and lets you just do things your way, then you'll tend to be a lot happier over the next 20 years, my beautiful Taurus friends. But this is particularly true whenever Pluto is retrograding. Because it's very much internalized, that feeling of frustration, like they're always breathing over my shoulder with everything that I'm doing, and it's driving me up the wall. And so you start to internalize, what do I really want in career? Analyze, how can I make this better for me to actually have more autonomy in the workplace? Now, this is also a time period where you might reorganize sort of the office system. If you're in an office or dealing with some sort of hierarchy, you might reorganize it to make it more uniquely your own, to put your own imprint on it. Pluto retrograde can cause you to do that. Sometimes Pluto retrograde, I'll get my words out, it's not a period for getting the recognition that we deserve. So you might reorganize that office system or that hierarchy or something at work, and nobody notices, nobody cares, nobody comments. You've just got to be a bit stoic about that, knowing that this is just the Pluto energy, and don't take it personally if you don't get the recognition that you deserve. But there's still a strong need to be in charge during this transit. Now, a bit of forewarning, forearming here, Taurus. If you have a tendency to be controlling or inflexible in your workplace, stubborn in the workplace, you've got to be very mindful about how you're treating people in your office, how you're treating your co-workers, and especially if you're an employer, how you're treating your employees. Any sort of overextension of authority that tries to control or dictate others, if you're in an authoritative position during this retrograde period, will cause a real sense of frustration and aggravation, and there can be sort of some pushback that you experience. So if you're in some sort of authoritative position, remember to act with kindness. I spoke about this in the introduction. Act with kindness, be considerate, be caring and compassionate wherever you can. Don't be sort of pushing that dominant, manipulative, power-hungry agenda during the Pluto retrograde process, Taurus. And I want to just mention, if you're interested in finding out more about Pluto's retrograde process through the 10th house, I have a whole hour-long video at my Pluto Through the Houses playlist. Check it out and find out what else is in store for you when Pluto moves for the next 20 years through this realm of the chart. Thank you, Taurus. Moving to Gemini now. Gemini, rising, sun or moon people. Well, for our Gemini friends, Pluto is going to be retrograding between the 4th or 5th, depending where you are in the world, of May through to the 13th of October in your 9th house. This is a time when you're going to be really shaken out of your comfort zone, Gemini. It's time to make perhaps some external change. Yes, Pluto retrograde is very internally focused, but the 9th and the 3rd house axis are all about restlessness without the world around us. You want change. You want to establish yourself in the world around you, and so this is a real time for shaking you out of a rut if you've got into one with where you're at in life. Pluto retrograde is going to help you look deep within and find a new life purpose and a new life direction. So enjoy this transit for what it reveals to you about where you want to be, who you want to be surrounded by, what you want to be doing in the world and giving to the world. Any retrograde planet in the 9th house can often indicate that there is a desire to go back to some sort of learning, to learn something new, but especially a very transformative and change-ridden planet like Pluto. And very frequently we see, beautiful Gemini friends, with Pluto retrograde in the 9th house, people want to go and study something again, and you want to internalize something. You want to take in some knowledge, because the 9th house is a house of knowledge. You want to take in some knowledge and integrate it deep within you. So have a think about, is there something you might like to learn? Is there something you've always wanted to study, Gemini? Maybe it's not necessarily going and doing a PhD. It could be, getting a certificate in astrology studies, or some certificate in natural medicine, or something that you've always been interested in. So if that's the case, do some analysis. Once you know what it is that you want to learn, then going back to learning during Pluto retrograde won't feel so daunting. And there, believe me, like with Uranus about to move into your sign, Gemini, you're going to want to learn. You're going to want to explore and understand, even at a workshop level, all that you can. And so it's likely to sort of kick in initially with this Pluto retrograding through the 9th house. You might feel daunted by learning something. There's going to be so many courses online over the coming years with Uranus moving through Gemini. You'll find the right thing for you, and you'll be able to enhance your career and develop new skills and grow your understanding and your wisdom. So do check things out. Do a bit of introspection about what you really want to understand, what you really want to learn about while Pluto moves through the 9th house retrograde. Now, Just on another topic with the ninth house, you might have some tough times with religion or dogmatism. Now you might encounter people who really, get stuck in, won't let up. I've got friends from my previous life as a Christian who actually are so like that, and it's just tough to be around them because they're hitting you over the head with their beliefs constantly. I need to be very careful about that myself. Jupiter rules the ninth house, or has an affiliation with the ninth house, generally speaking. And I have Jupiter in my first house. I know that I can be that way myself sometimes if I'm not careful. So I need to sort of bite my tongue around people so that I don't cause offense. But you are likely, Gemini, to encounter people with their dogmatic, hit you over the head with their beliefs, behavior, traditional religion ramming itself down your throat right now. And it might be just really soul-destroying, really discouraging, really frustrating. And also there's this sense while Pluto is retrograding here that you can't be who you really are around people with such rigid judgmentalism. And that feeling of I can't be my true self is aggravating to somebody who wants to discover their truth and their purpose and their direction with Pluto retrograding in the ninth house. You're going to be able to see the hypocrisy of religious leaders very, very clearly while Pluto's retrograding here. So my best advice to you, Gemini, would be avoid all situations that trigger feelings of disgust in you, or frustration in you over hypocrisy or judgmentalism that we observe. Just try and stay out of those scenarios until Pluto's finished retrograding. For example, you might attend church because your partner thinks it's really, really important, but every time you go, you're just bubbling with frustration over what's being said or whatever. Well, maybe you could take 5 months off. I think about there's an old Simpsons episode where Homer decides to stay home from church for the day and realizes, hey, this is pretty good. But take 5 months off from perhaps attending a religious institution just for your own sanity and well-being and the sanity and well-being of everyone around you, because it could just be too much. That would be my suggestion. Maybe I remember when I was with my first husband, we used to do car church. If we were driving to some event or, going to some concert or something like that, we'd do car church. And, it was ridiculous. But I don't know why I've gone off on that tangent, but you might find it easier to do your own home church rather than participating in conventional large groups of religion under Pluto's retrograde transit here in the ninth house. Thank you, Gemini. All right, Cancer rising, Cancer sun, Cancer moon people. I'm going to just stop you from having a bit of a stroll there, Cancer. And we are going to be looking at Pluto making a retrograde transit through your 8th house. This is a very high level house for intuition. And so you're going to feel more intuitive in the months ahead. And that's going to lead you to having some significant emotional advances. And in some case, some premonitions and some prophecies that could really change your life. So pay attention to all your feelings, all your gut, telling you certain things, or that innate wisdom, that inner knowing. Trust your higher wisdom now. It's not going to lead you astray. As someone with Pluto natally here in the chart, I can tell you, you're going to feel this very, very strongly. You might also, this is Pluto's kind of most comfortable, let's say, position in the horoscope because he's very much associated with the 8th house and associated with the sign that's usually associated with the 8th house, Scorpio. So you might find that over the next few months, Cancer, you need to take control of your financial situation in some way. And that might usually pertain to some partnership. So if you're in a marriage and the money's getting out of control, so you need to step in while Pluto's retrograding and sort the money situation in your family out, or sort the money situation in your business out. Be aware that can cause cooperation problems, When Pluto's retrograding here, sometimes it can come to light that our business partner or our marriage partner is spending more money than we knew they were. And where's the money going, I'm a control freak, Pluto in the 8th house, but I am a big advocate for keeping your money separate wherever and however and whenever you can. all for helping one another out, but keeping separate bank accounts, I think I learned that the hard way earlier on in my life. But control issues are very strong when Pluto is retrograde in the 8th house, and of course that does pertain to possessions, joint mortgages, joint loans, joint ownership of stuff, joint bank accounts. So be very, very careful that this Pluto retrograde can cause some friction with those sorts of things here in the 9th house. And themes of control and power and financial dominance, if you like, can come up for Cancer people during the retrograde of Pluto here. Remember, this is also a house of therapy. Pluto is the planet of therapy. So there are all sorts of therapies that we would recommend you getting involved with, Cancer, during Pluto's retrograde of the 8th house. Therapy, one form of therapy that my husband absolutely loves is playing shamanic instruments that cause a trance state to occur. There's all sorts of shamanic instruments that do that. I won't name them because I'll probably get some woke person telling me that white people shouldn't play certain instruments. As if instruments are available to all, as long as you're not doing the particular ceremonies of a cultural group that they associate with that particular instrument. And that's coming direct from certain quarters in Australia that are those cultural groups. All right, woke white women out there? Sorry, you can tell we've had experiences with that sort of thing before. Okay, so therapy can be many things, and here trance-induced sort of therapy is very, very powerful. So, whether that's listening to a meditation online, playing a trance instrument yourself, perhaps doing some trance dancing. I used to do 5 rhythms dance therapy, and it was fantastic for just going into another mental space and conversing with my higher self in that state. So all sorts of trance-inducing therapies are encouraged at this time to sort of sort out your inner processes and go really, really deep. It's also a fabulous time for connecting with all sorts of healers in almost every realm. The physical healers, the mental healers, the emotional healers, the spiritual healers, economic, financial healers, technological healers. If your technology needs healing, then I probably need you. If you're a technological healer, you should come see me because I'm shit with technology. But these sorts of people are very important to connect with now while Pluto is retrograding, and you can actually move forward in these areas in significant leaps and bounds by reaching out to people who have that healing capacity on all those different levels that I just mentioned. Also, Cancer, don't forget, if you would like to learn more about Pluto's transit through your 8th house for the next 20 years, check out my Pluto Through the Houses playlist. I go into great depth for about an hour for each house placement, exploring what it's going to do for you. So check that out at the Kesenya More YouTube channel. All right, moving to Leo. Rising, Sun, and Moon people. Oh my goodness, Leo. For the next 20 years, everything Pluto does is going to be felt potently by you because Pluto is in the 7th house, the house opposite you. It's an angular house, and angular houses express more potently than any other houses when we have transits like this going on in them. So brace yourself, Leo. Pluto's retrograde is going to bring out a lot of intense elements in your relationships. Business relationships, audience, client relationships, and marriages, okay? There can be power struggles and massive jealousies that occur as Pluto retrogrades and causes your partner mostly to look deeply inward at themselves and the changes there where they've lost power, where they want to take their power back, and so on. My God, this is exactly what I've experienced, not with David, no, with other people in my life, especially as Pluto's been retrograding opposite my sun in Leo for the last few months. So by the end of Pluto's retrograde, Leo, you're going to have attained a powerful clarity. So by October, powerful clarity about your interest in carrying on those personal connections into the future. And the power might come back to you, do you want them? Do you not want them in your life, my beautiful Leo friends? Now, Pluto retrograding in the 7th can also make you something of a loner during this time. You become a bit more solo man, solo woman. You know, skills of cooperation and sharing can be a bit harder to tap into during this time. It might require more consciousness, more effort to engage. Pluto is empowering this is an axis of the real individuals, really unique individual people who aren't afraid to go it alone. And Pluto is empowering both. So yeah, frequently, you know, it's going to be harder to sort of share and be mutual about things. So it requires a lot of awareness to navigate. Now, there may be some control issues during this Pluto retrograde phase that manifest in all one-to-one relationships. But in a marriage or marriage type of relationship, you might notice one person becoming more controlling. This is not a fantastic thing to experience. It's never healthy to see one partner becoming disempowered because another partner has become more dominant. This is not a bad omen for marriage to have Pluto transiting the 7th house. You know, it can be very empowering to a marriage, very healing for a marriage, very transformative for a marriage and other types of one-on-one relationships as well. But I really want to encourage you in relationships, take your time about things if you can. No rushing headlong into, that's it, I'm out of here and it's all over. Or let's get married tomorrow in Vegas, you know. No rushing headlong into these sorts of dynamics. Maturity is what's going to help you more than anything right now, Leo, to help your connections to last, to talk things out, to lay things on the table, to be honest and real with the people in your life, and to be able to navigate power issues and desire for control. This has certainly been the issue that I've been experiencing with Pluto opposite my sun, another person wanting a dominant power and control position that, you know, I don't want somebody else to have dominance and power over me. I want to give and take equally and harmoniously. So it's not David, it's not my husband, my friends. So just to let you know. So yes, we're navigating relationships very strongly now. Now, during Pluto retrograde, we need to learn to compromise. And that is what Pluto is wanting us to do here. Some of us have, through maturity and long-lived lives, have learnt to embrace that dynamic already. Others of us might still need to learn those lessons of compromise and giving our partner what it is they want in order for us to get what we want, which is a happy relationship dynamic. Give and take is where it's at, Leo, for especially the duration of Pluto's retrograde in this area of the chart. Now, I will also just touch on other things because I know there'll be people who have a bit of a whine in the comments section that all I do is talk about relationships in the 7th house. That's because it's the house of relationships, funnily enough. But I will also mention it is the 10th house from the 10th, making it a business house as well. So Pluto retrograding here will cause a lot of introspection that might cause a rebirthing in a business dynamic. So if you run a business, if you've got your own business, you might be going through a real shedding of the skin type process during this retrograde of Pluto so that something can be re-emerged out of the ashes by the time Pluto goes direct in October. So allow that process in, work with it, and you'll be fully utilizing the power of Pluto's energy. Also, don't forget, Leo, that if you want to know more about what Pluto is going to do for you in his 20-year transit, retrograde and direct, through the 7th house of the horoscope, I do have a wonderful playlist, Pluto Through the Houses, at my YouTube channel. And I spend a whole video for about an hour or so going into great depth about what this Pluto transit is going to do for you. Check that out. Learn more about what's in store. Thanks, Leo. All right, Virgo rising, Virgo sun, and Virgo moon people. The energy of Pluto is transiting retrograde now this week from the 4th or 5th of May, depending where you are in the world, to the 13th of October through your 6th house. So, guys, are the vibes off in your workplace? Are things a bit fractious at the moment? Do things feel tense? Are there power struggles in your workplace? Well, Pluto retrograding here is really calling you to maybe approach the people that are causing the problem, who are competing with you, who are undermining you at your workplace, in as gentle a way as possible. I'll just encourage you and really lay it on the table. Get honest, get true, expose the darkness that's happening in that sense, and make an awareness that, you see what's going on, and try and not lighten the workplace dynamic, because Pluto in the sixth house isn't all about being light, but it's about being real. And so it would really, really help to lay things on the table where you can, in as kindly a way as you can. Practicing transparency yourself during this transit is actually really, really important too. It's important for gaining the trust of others in the workplace. And by doing that, you're going to support your future work aspirations long into the future. So, getting real, being honest, being open, being transparent, Virgo, is really, really key. Talking things out where things have been shoved under the carpet before. And they could have been under the carpet for a very long time, creating a big bulge in the carpet, and they may need to be addressed now. But again, being honest, being real, being open is so important for trust. And Pluto is a planet heavily connected with our ability to trust or not. So really, I encourage you to consider that, Pluto, Virgo friends, going forward. This retrograde process is a time of being very intense and focused on your work. I mean, I will forewarn you about being a workaholic, because that's obviously not healthy. We want to maintain balance and harmony wherever we can in our life. But this is really, Pluto retrograde, a time for sort of knuckling down, getting stuff done, working hard, and seeing a lot of progress. You probably won't be able to handle lots of interruptions, though, at this time, because the intensity and the focus is so strong. My poor children, I have been so obsessed with astrology during their whole lifetimes. And, when I'm reading an astrology book, they might come and say, "Mom, when's dinner?" And I'm like, I'm lost in my astrology book. And, dinner will be in an hour. And I've dragged myself away from my astrology book to go and do dinner. So this is what we're talking about, this intense focus on your work. I've given you an example of my passion, but your work. And so interruptions can be frustrating, and this can cause, if you're not careful in your workplace, alienation with co-workers, frustration with co-workers who want to be a part of what's going on, who want to be part of the team. And you're there, my way or the highway kind of thing. So it might actually, during this retrograde process till October, if you were in a position where you can do this, it might be best to look for opportunities to work alone now, if possible, to go solo. Take a project and run with it yourself without needing to be in a team situation. That will actually work better for you. Pluto retrograding here will also cause you to introspect about your daily life as well, looking at where your health and well-being is out of balance, or your exercise routine might have slid over the last 6 months or so, and you're like, right, that's it. I have to revitalize my health. I have to revitalize my routines. Pluto is all about regenerating something and having it rise up from the ashes. So during the retrograde process, the second phase process, which I talked about in the introduction to this video, Pluto is really digging deep into, okay, well, what needs to go and what needs to stay in terms of that dynamic. That's what I wanted to share with my Virgo friends. And I will also mention, my beautiful Virgo friends, if you want to know more about what Pluto is going to do for you when he transits through for the next 20 years, your sixth house, then I would just encourage you to check out my playlist all about Pluto through the houses. There's a big hour-long video there all about Pluto transiting the sixth house. You are going to love it. Check it out. Thank you, Virgo. Okay, Libra rising, Libra sun, and Libra moon people. For my Libran friends, Pluto is making his retrograde transit through the fifth house. And being a Libran, you know all about leaning on other people. And Pluto here is, it's not so much about looking to or leaning on other people to find that creative spark. It's looking within you. It's finding the creative spark inside you, instead of looking out there at, okay, well, what are they doing? Oh, well, that's a good idea. I might implement that. No, look at, okay, what do I think would be cool? What do I think would be wonderful? Because Pluto is a solo player a lot of the time. And he really, in retrograde motion, wants you to introspect in order to generate creativity in your life. So think about things like what inspires you, what excites you, what's giving you joy in life right now. Well, there's a message in those things from Spirit for you. Spirit's speaking to you, guiding you, showing you a new path. Take time in your life while Pluto is retrograding through the 5th house, Libra, to discover what's floating your boat right now these days. You might actually be surprised at how your passions have shifted and the new direction they're now taking. You know, I did a big analysis process myself about a month ago along these lines, not even thinking about upcoming Pluto transit retrograde here, but looking at, okay, well, what is my vision for my life now that my children are grown and starting to make their way in the world and leave the nest, so to speak, and now that David's in my life, you know, my whole world has changed drastically, pretty much since, it feels like, since Saturn moved into Pisces. Of course, that's what he tends to do, is restructure everything wherever he goes. And so here, with Pluto redirectioning, going backwards, we need to go over, okay, well, what is my passion now? What is my joy now? What floats my boat now? And I've been astounded at how different it is to what I've always thought it was. It's probably happened in a gradual way, I think, over many, many years, but the awareness is coming to me now of where my heart is these days. And so this is what Pluto wants to reveal to you when he goes retrograde. Where is your heart? What do you love now? Pluto retrograde, as we know, is very psychological. And this can actually, as I've already mentioned, can see your creative potential finally starting to defrost and come out for some reason or another, because you're letting the deep inner psychological side of you be seen. And that can come out very creatively here in the 5th house. Your ability to focus on expressing yourself also goes to a new level when Pluto goes retrograde here. So your drive for creative expression can really grow. And so it's a great time for doing anything creative while Pluto is retrograde, you know, creating a new website or, you know, writing a song or doing a play or something like that. You can really go to a whole new level of empowerment with your creative expression. But also, this is a house of celebrity, Libra, and your drive for celebrity might actually be being born during Pluto's retrograde phase. So some of you might have thought, I now have no desire for celebrity, don't care if people know who I am or not. Well, Pluto going retrograde can actually trigger a stirring in, well, you know, I wish people knew about this, or I wish people knew about that, and maybe I'm the one to deliver that message. It can trigger a cycle for celebrity, let's say. Not if it's not in your natal chart, then it's not there. But Pluto here by transit can, for those who do have it latent in their chart, can trigger a potential for celebrity or a drive for celebrity or a desire for celebrity as well. So if you've already got that desire for celebrity, then it's really going to go to sort of an intensified level. And of course, along with that intensive energy that you're feeling in a hunger for celebrity, let's say, or recognition, along with that feeling and that energy can often come manifestation in the external world too. Pluto can even bring you a new level of popularity and celebrity status. But I would just say Pluto is tremendously polarizing. And you may find that, and certainly as a Libra person, and I certainly don't seek celebrity. That is, I'm here to teach. I'm here to share the empowerment that is astrology. I couldn't care less if people know who I am. In fact, Pisces rising, I'd, many senses, much rather have a quiet, simple nana life in the country. But I do this because I feel called to do it. But as a Libran moon person, I know I've certainly found since Pluto has moved into my 5th house that people are very polarized over me. And, you know, so you may experience that as well if you're having this transit Libra. You know, you're out there in the world doing what you need to do, and people are very much either really tuned into you and in alignment with your energy, loving your energy, or they hate your guts. And I've seen that so strongly since Pluto has been in the 5th house of celebrity. So if you're out there as somebody visible in the world, like a celebrity kind of thing, just know that Pluto here could be causing a lot of polarization. Yes, Pluto can empower and grow your celebrity status, absolutely. He absolutely can here, but there will also equally be, not perhaps equally, but there will also be a number of haters that you've got to contend with as well. Also, as I said, Pluto can bring you to a new level of popularity or celebrity status with this transit, this retrograde process, but the reason that he gives that might actually come to us as a surprise to everyone, including you. Like, you might have a YouTube channel and you think that's where, you know, Pluto's going to give a lot of rise in popularity, and you do something else on the side as a hobby, as an interest, and boom, that's where the celebrity comes. You didn't even think that would be a thing. So Pluto can be very surprising that way. Often things happen where we aren't expecting them to. So Libra, get ready. Now, if you want to know more about Pluto's transit, both direct and retrograde, through the 5th house of the horoscope, Libra, do check out my Pluto Through the Houses playlist. It's got a whole video there for about an hour on what Pluto's going to do for you over the next 20 years here in the sign of Aquarius, your 5th house. Thank you, Libra. All right, Scorpio rising, Scorpio sun, Scorpio moon people sees Pluto moving retrograde for the next 5 months through the 5th house. My dear Scorpio friends, this is a really important time to set aside time and space and energy for your family, be they your own children and husband or wife, or for your parents and siblings and so forth. So set aside time for family and focus on strengthening the bonds while Pluto goes retrograde here. It's actually, you know, you may have a real disconnect from your family. You might not like your family, whatever reasons, but it's actually really important, Scorpio, to utilize this energy where you can. And if you're, you know, distanced from your family in some way, write them a letter. Just, you know, you don't have to actually personally one-on-one engage with them. You know, if you haven't spoken to them for years, write them a letter. Let them know where you're at and what you're doing, and reconnect. Like, this Pluto energy is all about going deep, reanalyzing, and ceasing the self-sabotage through coming to a level of understanding. Pluto is not the planet of forgiveness, but there is a healing with Pluto, and he can be very transformative here in the 4th house through retrograde motion. The 4th house is a hugely psychological house, as we well know, Scorpio. So with Pluto retrograding here, yes, we have to be very wary of controlling and manipulative parents if that's what we've had. And so keeping a distance maybe is desirable, but there are other ways, like I've just said, of connecting without having to engage one-on-one. Or we also need to be careful, if we are a parent, that when Pluto starts retrograding, we don't start becoming the controlling, manipulative parent. Be very careful of that. We often think we're doing what's best for our children, and really we're the helicopter parent, or we are keeping our children from finding their way in the world. What happens? They end up rebelling. You know, we're trying to protect them and keep them all fenced in, and they hate it by the time they get older, and they resent it by the time they get older. So be very conscious that you're not going down that path during Pluto retrograde season as well, Scorpio. Use this energy instead to gain good psychological insights into your family dynamics as you reflect, as you dissect, as you come to an understanding of your family history. It's really good to do a deep dive into family history now, actually, with Pluto retrograding here, to understand where you come from culturally and your background, and start embracing those things. And if there's some sort of wounding in your life from a family situation or a family upbringing, then it's a good time with Pluto going retrograde here to seek therapy for such things. You know, could be any type of therapy: music therapy, art therapy, dance therapy, journaling, or you might like to see a professional therapist if that is necessary to sort of help heal or resolve some deep wounds. Also hypnotherapy. I have neglected to mention that. I became a certified hypnotherapist over summer, and it's something that I think is very valuable for growing our neural pathways into directions that we really desire them to grow for a healthy brain and a healthy attitude and a healthy life. But that's something I'll introduce here at the channel a little later. On a positive note, with this placement, you might also really get involved in some renovations or house flipping, maybe establishing a garden or something like that while Pluto is transiting here for the next 20 years, but especially while he goes retrograde. So this is a positive expression of Pluto control. If you're controlling your neat and tidy garden, that's a fabulous expression of Pluto in retrograde motion in the 4th house. So go for it. You can always control things. We absolutely can control or attempt to control things, but never people, never people. So this is a healthy directioning of this energetic imprint. Control the color of your bathroom or the plants that you've put in your veggie patch. Much better way to utilize this energy. So Scorpio, this transit through the 4th house, I go into greater detail with, in fact, a whole 1-hour video in my Pluto through the houses playlist. I've got a whole hour on Pluto through the 4th house. If you want to check that out, go to the YouTube channel, check out that video. You're going to find out so much more of what Pluto's up to down here in your chart for the next 20 years. All right, Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius sun, Sagittarius moon people. Pluto is currently doing a retrograde motion until October the 13th through your 3rd house. And so this is the house of our speech and our words and our communication. And while Pluto is retrograding, we need to choose our words very carefully, my Saggy friends. So when you express yourself, we have to be very conscious of not coming across too dogmatically, too blunt, too harsh. We need to slow down, Saggy, and take time to find the right words so that we can make real lasting connections with other people and not come off as a know-it-all, That's one of the potential tripping hazards, if you like, of Sagittarius energy, because they do know so much. But it's connected to this dogmatism that we see in religion from time to time, where we think we know it all and that our belief is the only belief and our way is the only way. And so we need to sort of be much more, while Pluto is moving retrograde through the house of communications, more considerate of other people in our communications and how we speak and how we write and how we interact communicatively with others. Pluto in retrograde motion here can have us, if we're not careful, we have a great deal of power and ability to control the minds of others. And we need to be very conscious of that, Sagittarius, and not exploiting that, not using that to some sort of evil advantage, because we've got to be careful of our karma, come back in the next life and somebody does that to you. Who would want that? So we need to be very careful of our capacity to control the minds of other people. It's a superpower that we want to wield with great consciousness and great integrity. But you might like to look at, writing things that uplift, communicating and sharing things that bless, because the ability to control the minds of others or speak to the hearts and minds of other people should be utilized to bring good to the world. And what a noble, wonderful thing that is to do. So Sagittarius, if you've got a message to share, if you've got something the universe has laid on your heart, write a book about it or do a speech about it or start a YouTube channel about it, because you have been gifted something from the divine that can really change the dynamic on the planet. Now, if you are a Sagittarius person and you're in some sort of school, usually it would be sort of more primary or high school, but you could look at any other kind of workshopping or TAFE or sort of adult learning kind of energy as well. If you're in school, you might start to feel a level of rebelliousness because the system of the education system that you're in might actually be triggering a sense of frustration in you. Okay, so I know, look, when I was at primary school, I hated the system of education that I was in, and I was a bit defiant, I have to say, as a child. I have a very strong Uranus, so that was very much not interested in buckling under what my teachers were saying and what my teachers were trying to get me to do. I hated it. And you may also be feeling into that type of energy, my beautiful Saggy friends, with Pluto doing the retrograde here in the house of general schooling. You'll also find, I think, that you will have little tolerance for shallow information over the next 5 months or so. the third house is famous for shallow information. It's all the news, all the gossip, all the, what's happening with the Kardashians. That's, social media, all that stuff. That's actually a third house thing. And, Pluto goes deep. Pluto is get to the bottom of things, get to the core, like I spoke about in the introduction. And this second phase of Pluto's three-phase process could see you, just had it up to here with talking about the weather, thanks very much, but no thanks. So there might be a lot of gossip around, a lot of social media, a lot of Kardashians around, and it's going to drive you effing bonkers. So forewarned, Sagittarius. Pluto retrograde can bring tensions also with sibling relationships. It can bring confrontations with friends and relatives if we're not aware and not conscious. It can bring power struggles and control issues to the surface. And if they've been lying latent but they're still there, then they might pop out like a volcano that we have to try and contain in our lives. So knowledge is power, Sagittarius. That's what I see Pluto retrograde's process bringing into your life. And if you want to know more about Pluto's transit through the third house, then check out my Pluto through the houses playlist. I go into great detail for about an hour each sign, looking at Pluto and his direct and retrograde motion there for the next 20 years. Check it out. Thank you, Capricorn rising, Capricorn sun, Capricorn moon people. Well, we have Pluto retrograding for Capricorn people through the second house. Now, this is a very important placement. Pluto is the god of great wealth financially, is a financial god here in the house of the money that you have. And so when Pluto is retrograding here for the next 5 months, it's a great time to explore and do some deep diving and research about financial opportunities and maybe discover some new investment strategies that you might like to implement. I would suggest perhaps when Pluto goes direct, that would be the best time to implement them. But the research and the possibility for uncovering new financial gold is very powerful now for Capricorn people. Pluto retrograde in the second house, it does want to control its own resources. A bit like I talked about this a little with Pluto retrograde in the 8th house. But this is your resources, not shared mutual resources. This is your stuff. You want to control your stuff. And there might be some psychological fears that come to the surface and feelings of vulnerability regarding the loss of resources. So it's a bit hoardy, like that's mine and you're not having it, and what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too, and I'm keeping it. We can become really paranoid, if you like. Pluto rules paranoia about our stuff and keeping our stuff, and no one's going to take it from me. And we can obsess over being in control, or we can obsess over, I'm afraid of being out of control with my resources, refusing to let another person have any say and any control over what we have. So you do have the ability to share, my beautiful Capricorn friends, but the energy of this transit might make it very aggravating and frustrating to have to share your stuff. So knowledge is power. Yes, financial opportunities, fantastic, wonderful, but also be very careful. I mean, is there anything wrong with wanting to hoard and keep for yourself? I don't know. I think about one of my favorite films, It's a Wonderful Life, and the old dickhead in the town who runs the whole town and pretty much owns the bank. And he was very much like what I'm describing, the Ebenezer Scrooge kind of character. And I forget his name. I've just gone blank on his name. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. But this energy, do you really want to be that kind of person? Do you really want to be in that kind of energy? It potentially is very strong now, Pluto retrograding here. And I just encourage you, this could impact you karmically and how things express for you in your next incarnation if you go full on into this Ebenezer Scrooge kind of Pluto retrograde energy. Better to be conscious about it, to see where you're being controlling and manipulative, and instead try to be giving, try to be generous where you can and how you can with what you have. That's a much better approach. Let me just say, there is a very famous and extraordinarily wealthy person, Bill Gates, who has Pluto in the second house. I can't recall whether it's retrograde or direct, but either way, Bill Gates, to me, he doesn't present himself, obviously, who would want to, as a Scrooge kind of character. He gives the illusion of being generous, of being, I'm giving all this money to injection research and all that stuff, and I'm buying up all this farmland, but hey, I want everyone to eat lab-grown meat. This man is a worry. I'm probably old news to you that he is an absolute worry. He has so much money and so little integrity. So he doesn't come across as the traditional old Ebenezer Scrooge, kind of stuff. But he's about the money, and he's about manipulation, power, and control with the money. So I mention that because, my dear Capricorn friends, you don't want to end up with his karma. You don't want to end up with anything like the karma that man is going to have. So tread with consciousness and awareness about how you use your money, how you spend your money, and where you're going with your financial situation in life. Pluto through the second house for the next 20 years is going to be here, Capricorn, and you may like to check out my Pluto through the houses playlist, where I have a whole hour-long video about Pluto transiting the second house that goes into greater depth about what this might do in your life and what it might bring your way in the next 20 years. Check out that video if you haven't already. All right, thank you, Capricorn. Moving on to Sagittarius. Oh, no, we've done Sagittarius. We're doing Aquarius. Aquarius rising, Aquarius sun, and Aquarius moon, people. Well, for our Aquarian friends, guess what? Pluto is in your first house. I bet you knew that already, Aquarius. But what does it mean when Pluto is retrograding here in the first house? Well, it means you're in the second phase of this 3-phase Pluto process that I talked about in the introduction. And so this means that you're introspecting and in that cocoon phase of change. So this is a really dynamic energy for evolving and transforming. You are in the preparation phase, preparing for a major shift and a major transformation in your life. A big change is coming, Aquarius. You're probably going to start to move into that new change in October, when Pluto goes direct. But with Pluto retrograde here, this is the house of the body, the house of our physicality, and our recuperative abilities of our body become very powerful when Pluto goes retrograde. We suddenly find that we can heal, we can restore, we can regenerate, we can rebirth our physical health. So if you've been suffering from an illness or dealing with some physical condition or limitations in some way, then you can actually really have quite an interesting and exciting time for the next 5 months as Pluto rebirths you from the ashes to some level. Now, a lot of this will require your own energy to be put into it. This is the house of you. So you are required to take the step, to make the choice, to use your courage, to get something done. And it might require you having to show up at the gym every day to get fit again and lose weight. It might require you having to get strict about what you're eating, or your beauty routine or something. You might have to put some effort in, but the regenerative capacity and potential here is powerful if you choose to use it. As I've laid out before in many videos, astrology is a roadmap telling you where the road is bumpy and where the road is straight and where the road is windy. How you drive it is up to you. So here, Aquarius, the intensity of Pluto in the first house can be really well utilized by service to other people. How you can guide, how you can help, how you can heal, how you can support others is a big focus now. And I encourage you to think about those things. Go there deep into those things, because if you're using Pluto energy for that purpose, your karma is going to be right up there. Get the focus off yourself. This is one of the dangers of Pluto in the first house, where we become so obsessed with the self, obsessed with who we are, and obsessed with power for me. Get the focus off yourself, lest it lead to sort of selfishness and domination of the people that you really care about. So heal others, guide others, help others, support others. Great way to use Pluto in the first house retrograde energy. Now, you also need to watch out for sort of internalized anger and powerful emotions now, because they will be present when you're feeling them, when they're bubbling up inside of you and you feel like you can't control them. Know where it's coming from. Pluto retrograde in the first house. Some of you might also be considering surgery now, especially for cosmetic purposes. This is the house of our appearance. So you might be looking at, getting a lip implant or, dermal filler or something like that. Some sort of surgery for cosmetic purposes. But it also can be, Pluto here can lead to, as I've already alluded to in what I've said, it can lead to great physical transformations like large weight loss. And if we're not careful, maybe large weight gain, or if you want, big muscular gain, can happen while Pluto moves retrograde through here. It can be very much, Pluto is an indicator in the first house of huge makeovers, the Audrey Hepburn, My Fair Lady kind of a thing, where you go from one state of being to something completely different. I just think of the scene. I just love the scene where she says, she's at the races, at the Ascot races, and she yells out, "Move your bleeding ass!" And fabulous. Audrey was wonderful, even if they did happen to pair her with a man twice her age for that film, as they always seem to do in old Hollywood movies. What was with that? Anyway, now back to what we're talking about here, Pluto in the first house. Big makeovers, big sort of redefining of the self that happens. So physical, yes, but also image and presentation wise. And there can also be massive healing at both a psychological level, a spiritual level, and healing, as I've already said, at the physical level for our Aquarius friends. So my dear Aquarius friends, did you know that I have a Pluto through all the houses playlist at my YouTube channel, and I've got a whole hour-long video on Pluto moving through the first house? You might want to check that out if you haven't already and find out what Pluto is going to do for you direct and retrograde here in the first house of Aquarius, your sign, for the next 20 years. And now finally we get to our lovely Pisces, Pisces rising, Pisces sun, Pisces moon people. Boom, there we are. Pisces, Pluto is retrograding in your 12th house. And this is actually quite a fabulous place to have Pluto retrograde. Pluto does very well, I must say, in the 12th house. So something to look forward to for the next 20 years. But let's explore this retrograde process. What's it going to bring us from now until October? Well, it's a house of our dreams, and Pluto empowers everything he touches. And in the 12th house, what's he going to do retrograde? Because Pluto is more potent when he's retrograde. Remember, I talked about that in the introduction. Pluto wants us to dream big. Both our night dreams might be just off the charts, enormously powerful and life-changing and soul-growing, but also our daydreams, our visions, our highest ideals can really go through great change and empowerment now. Pluto energy. So if you haven't done a vision board, Pisces, for this year of your life, get on it. Pluto wants to do stuff here. And in fact, do a vision board for the next 20 years. Where do you want to be? Get it out there. Pluto is here to transform and change your visions and goals and to empower your dreams and aspirations. So dream big and embrace the possibilities for really dynamic manifestation and growth and change. This is a house of magic and miracles. And with Pluto, the power of transformation, the power of activation, moving through this area of the chart and very powerful through retrograde, the miracles and magic that are possible in our lives are enormous, but they're particularly activated by mental focus, doing like deep, when I say mental focus, it's not that the 12th house is a house of it is a house of research, but it's a house of being so, let's call it, focused on something that we're lost in the la la land with it. We're not even present in reality. So I would call that great mental capacity to detach and go off to another realm. So by doing so, visioning and imagining, there's so much power in our ability to imagine, my friends. Imagine the world that you want. Imagine the life that you want. And that is what I would determine as great mental focus that comes quite naturally to Pisces people, I have to say as well. But miracles and magic are possible through prayer. This is a spiritual house. Through your belief that miracles and magic can manifest, and meditating on what it is you want in life, putting your energy into it, filling that energy of dreams with who you want to be and what you want to be. That's why vision boards are so important for Pisces people now, with Pluto retrograding in the 12th house. Pluto retrograding in the 12th house is a time for doing some probing insight into your psychology, analyzing who you are the way you are, why you feel the way you do, what is triggering thoughts and feelings that are popping up in you. We really want to get to the bottom of it and understand it. It's very healing at a psychological level, Pluto moving through this area of the chart, especially retrograde. However, it's very confronting as well. You know, I talk about an incident that's happened to me with Pluto opposite my sun over the first half of 2025 that really caused me to, it felt very hurtful and wounding, but it really caused me to do some deep soul searching and, you know, realizing, you know, certain things about myself that I perhaps had ignored or been self-righteous about. So I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for Pluto's ripping the Band-Aid off kind of effect, because it helped me to see where that scab on my on my heart needed some work, needed some attention, needed some healing. So this deep psychological analyzing that can occur with Pluto retrograding here. Something happens and it starts to shift the lens of our life to cause a clearer focus for us on who we are and what we're doing with our life. We're seeing where we've let ourselves down. We're seeing where we've acted without integrity. We're seeing where we've made a false move. And so this is a wonderful time to seek forgiveness. This is a house of forgiveness. So a wonderful time to seek forgiveness, either in the third dimensional reality where you need to seek it, or to seek it in the heavenly realm and just sort of offer energetically, you know, your sorry to the divine beings, to your higher self, or to the other person who you may have offended, on a divine level, if you prefer to do it that way. Make amends if you have to, or simply vow to your higher self to take a new path from now on and not to do that to yourself. Well, oftentimes the person we need to forgive most of all is ourselves, for our mistakes, for our, you know, putting a foot wrong. We're human. We all make mistakes, and forgiving ourselves is a big component of being able to move forward and heal psychologically. So making a vow to take a new path can be a really healing process with Pluto retrograding here. The universe is your friend, Pisces, and you're going to have powerful support to really change and release old patterning at this time. Therapy, wonderful. Pluto is the planet of therapy, especially any therapy that involves personal introspection, such as journaling or taking time out for reflection. Very empowered here. The 12th house does have connections to music and film and art and dance as well. So therapy that involves any of those sorts of things, dance therapy, music therapy, art therapy, great to utilize that kind of stuff as well. It's a more isolated energy, the 12th house, so it's not really, Pluto retrograding here isn't about the therapy that we get when we go and have a yibba yabba with our friends over coffee and try and resolve things by sort of getting them off our chest with someone else. It's more our own personal therapy that is a 12th house thing. So like I said, journaling, taking time for reflection, doing some sort of active therapy like I've just described. You might also find that with Pluto retrograding in the 12th house, that you really start to notice in you a talent for understanding other people's strengths and weaknesses. Knowing, you know, because you come to understand your own weaknesses and your own foibles in yourself, and you start to recognize them in other people. Well, they're behaving controllingly. I've seen that in me recently, and because I'm recognizing that pattern in them. I see how they're trying to control their children. Or I see how, you know, we start to understand because we've done our own introspection. It's not judging others. It's actually about understanding the strengths and weaknesses exhibiting in the people all around us now. And we are actually able, with Pluto retrograding here, to help other people to help themselves. You know, if they want it. You know, don't be going and offering your advice when it's not asked for. But if somebody comes to us and says, look, I'm really struggling with this, you could offer some wisdom, offer some guidance, because you will have done enough introspective work on yourself to be able to offer that. So at a wonderful level, this is a highly protective position to have Pluto here, a Pluto planet of power in the house of the 12th house, I should say. It's wonderfully protective, especially in life-threatening situations. This is where we really are protected from evil entities as well on a celestial level. The Pluto sort of is like putting this force field around us in that sense. But it's also really brilliant for bringing our dream life into manifested reality. So fantastic energy, Pisces, especially if we work with Pluto to do the therapy and the releasing and the letting go and the introspection that creates psychological space for the new manifestation that our heart desires. So if you want your dreams to come true, Pluto retrograding here in the 12th house says do the therapy to create the space and then watch the miracle happen. So my beautiful Pisces friends, thank you for waiting till last. Did you know I have a whole video on Pluto's transit through the 12th house? And you can check that out. It's about an hour long, going into great depth of what's going to happen for you over the next 20 years as Pluto retrogrades here in the 12th house. Simply go to my Pluto Through the Houses playlist. You'll find it there. So much you can glean from what Pluto's up to in this magical house. Thank you, my beautiful friends. I'll be back next week with another Astro Weather Report, and I will catch you then.